betrayal, disappointments, life plans that don't go like we expect. What in the world is God thinking? Are you there? Have you been there? Are you working through it? I have coached women for 14 years and I have not met a woman yet that has said, Darlene, my life plan has gone just like I wanted. Haven't met her yet. And if that's you, please message me. If it's not you, hang in there. We're working through this together. I am Darlene Larson, and I work with women and help them shift from grief loss to their life purpose, especially women with horrific stories that want to use their pain for His glory. And, go to my website, heartswithapurpose.com. But what do we do with betrayal? And what do we do if we sense God's betrayed us? Have you ever thought of that? Resentment, disappointment, and you're stuck in your story, you're stuck in a downward spiral. What do you do? How do you handle this? Number one is what I do when I coach women is I let them talk, and I listen, and I listen, and I listen. And I can hear sometimes the control of the anger and holding it back. But you know what? Anger is emotion that we have, and God says, be angry, but don't sin. So what do we do with that anger? Well, it's important we unpack it. I had anger in me once that was the size of a volcano inside me, like hot lava. And unfortunately, I did spew it out in a wrong way to those that I've gotten things right with in my life for that. But it's something I've learned how to overcome. Thank you, Jesus. So what do we do with the anger toward God? Or we sense He's betrayed us. I want to read something to you that I have just read recently in John Eldridge's book, The Restoration Year. Great devotional. But listen what he says here. You need to forgive Jesus. It says, restore to me the joy of your salvation. Grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. That's Psalm 51 too. And back in 06, I prayed that verse, Psalm 112, restore to me the joy of my salvation. And God has done that in my life. And then grant me a willing spirit. I asked Him to help me stay alive. Back then in my journey, I was living in a very, very toxic environment at that time, and I needed His sustaining, and He did. So listen to what John says here. If you're holding something in your heart against Jesus, no amount of ignoring it is going to make it go away. The loss of someone you love or pain from your past, simply the way your life's turned out. In order to move forward, you're going to need to forgive Jesus. Now, I want you to know that this piece is something that I've journeyed through, and John Eldridge is the only one that I've read that states that. And I know that I kept going to the Lord in my story and entrusting Him with my story. And what I want to share with you is, number one, we have to admit when we're in pain and we're angry and disappointed, or we can't get through it. And when I coach women, that's where we begin. Admit. Number two is, what are you going to do with the anger and the venom? Because we live in a broken world, and the sin of others and our own sin gets all tangled up. So how do we sort through that? Well, we can. And so what I want to share next is what John says. But Jesus doesn't need my forgiveness. I'm going to read that again. Jesus doesn't need my forgiveness, you protest. I didn't say He did. I said that you need to forgive Jesus. To be clear, to forgive a person, you pardon a wrong done to you. Forgiving Jesus means to release the resentment you hold against Him. I want you to know that He hits the nail on the head here. Resentment can make us become really bitter. And so I want you to think about this. Do you need to forgive Jesus? Let Him off the hook because your life hasn't gone the way you planned? So I want you to think about this, is to forgive Jesus. He says, but in your hurt, part of you believe Jesus could have done something about it, and He didn't. Oh yeah, I so get that. Oh yeah, many times I was there. But I kept entrusting myself back to Him and knew that in time He would lead me forward and lead me out. So number one is admit it. Number two is pray about this. Do you need to forgive Jesus? And then the third is I'm going to suggest to you is you forgive yourself. We do need to come to grips at times with ourselves and realize, you know what? I've blown it. I do need to ask forgiveness. And when I had the volcano of anger in me, I had to get it right with those that I hurt, because I had to learn how to deal with the anger in me and why I was so angry at God and at others in my life. But I had to learn to speak and not let that anger monster grow. And so, one, admit. Number two is do. Think about this. Do you need to forgive Jesus? And number three, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. You're on a journey to grow. So glad to have you here. Feel free to follow my channel. You also can sign up at heartswithapurpose.com and stay in touch. And if you want to use your traumatic story for His glory, love to coach you. Darlene Larson at Hearts with a Purpose. Have a wonderful day. Think about this verse. Restore to me the joy of your salvation. Grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. Psalm 51:12.